Well, Mystery Wire with George Knapp is back. I'm Ron Futrell. We've also got Carlos Sampson and John Forrest helping us out, putting this together now. And the website, we're going to be updating the website on a regular basis. You and I started this project, now I'm thinking 7-8 years ago?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so. There was a vice president from Nexstar, the company that owns KLAS, who saw the increased interest by the public, by our viewers at KLAS, in these topics, UFOs. We've been covering it for a long time. I've been covering it for a long time. And then you, when they created the idea for Mystery Wire as a central repository for all the stories I'd done on Area 51, UFOs, and those kinds of mysteries, you came on board. And I know you're not known as a UFO guy, but you became a UFO guy by collecting all this material. You went through every file at KLAS and became sort of an expert on this stuff.
I was happy to do that. I have reverence for the topic, certainly. I've told you that before. And I saw a lot of these stories because I worked at a competing TV station here in town doing sports. And I saw these stories when they were live, when you did them back in the day, and was, I'll use the word jealous. I don't know what else to say. But of the fact that 8 News Now had you and had all these stories and were opening up a whole new world. And it started with an interview you did with Bob Lazar in 1989 when he came on live. John Lear, Learjet fame, had set you guys up together. He was working at Area 51, and he made some incredible disclosures. Let's jump into it right now. And this was a story that aired in 2019. That was the 30th anniversary of the original interview you did with him, and then I want to get your comments, but let's jump into what 8 News Now did back then with Bob Lazar.
There's really no way I can prove it without revealing my identity and getting myself into more trouble than I have already.
Exactly what's going on up there?
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs that are out there of extraterrestrial origin. And they're basically being dismantled. Some are, well, in various stages of completion, built from other parts, and they're being test flown and basically just analyzed.
You say there's 9 saucers. How are those tests going?
As far as what?
As far as whether they're successful and that sort of thing.
Oh, well, some of them are 100% intact and operate perfectly. The other ones are being taken apart. I was involved mainly in propulsion and the power source, basically, as far as I can remember, there are about half of them do operate, and the other half are just been torn down, basically to analyze the components to them.
Where did we get these saucers? How did they come into the hands of the government?
I haven't the slightest idea, and you have to understand the information is very compartmentalized.
The interview had been set up at the last minute. Dennis, whose real name is Bob Lazar, met our news unit in front of the home of John Lear, put on a microphone, then sent shockwaves through UFO circles. Lazar recalls what was going through his mind at the time.
It was a very frightening moment. It was certainly not a comfortable thing to do.
Within days, the story of the Dennis interview had traveled around the world. Busloads of the saucer curious descended on the outskirts of Area 51. The little town of Rachel became a hub of ET enthusiasm, and the search was on for the true identity of the man in the shadows.
Up until the very moment, I was wondering whether or not this was a good thing to do. And to be honest, I'm still not sure it was a good idea.
When Lazar had told us he was concerned about getting into more trouble than he was already in, he was referring to this.
Here's the night John Lear saw his first flying disc.
2 months before the Dennis interview, Lazar began taking a few friends out to the desert on Wednesday nights. They focused their attention not on Groom Lake, but in the direction of Papoose Lake, which is where Lazar said he worked, a facility he called S4. And sure enough, on each of 3 outings, the groups witnessed a glowing disc rise above Papoose, even though officially there has never been a base or facility there. How did he know? 3 decades later, the public is still fascinated with the story Lazar unleashed.
I was, very worried at the time about repercussions, and of course had no idea that we would be talking about this 30 years down the road.
Can we overstate the impact that interview had in 1989 that you did here at 8 News Now?
It was an explosion. You know, I was co-anchoring with Paul Francis, the 5 o'clock news, and every day we'd have this 5-minute live interview, and whoever the guest was supposed to be that day, they bailed on us. And so I called John Lear, hey, about your scientist guy who works at Area 51, might he talk to us? Having no idea what had been going on in Lazar's life in the interim since I heard about him, and they arranged it. And suddenly this story comes spilling out. I didn't know exactly what he was going to say. Paula Francis had no idea. The news director didn't. I remember being pulled off the set. Bob Stoddall and our general manager called me into the office and said, what the hell was that? Is that real? I said, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess we are going to have to find out. And so for the next 7.5, 8 months, I investigated Lazar and also the UFO topic in general. And I think his story certainly galvanized my attention, but also the fact that the government had clearly been lying to us for a really long time. It really ticked me off. And that's what sunk its claws into me, and here I still am. I didn't intend to be a UFO reporter the rest of my life, but, you know, here we are.
Well, he used the name Dennis, which I understand was his superior's name.
Right.
And his boss there at Area 51, which I find sort of funny. But it set off, let's go here. I mean, Area 51, still to this day, you say that to people, they understand, they know what the mystique out there may not, well, we don't know everything, but they understand the mystique it was because of, that was ground zero. That was patient zero, if you will, at the beginning of all the Area 51 stuff, would you say?
I mean, it was a very obscure base. On purpose, they kept it quiet. You know, they didn't want people to know what goes on out there in the middle of the desert. That's why they selected that spot, is because there weren't a lot of people around. This put it on the map, a worldwide map. It's launched 1,000 different UFO-type projects. The ET Highway was sanctioned by the state of Nevada. There's the Little Ailey Inn. Every day there's tour buses that go out there. Every news organization in the world is beating a path to its door. What started as sort of this obscure interview on our 5 o'clock news became a series and then a phenomenon. And it's the most famous, best-known secret base in the world.
And a baseball team here for 18 years, the minor league baseball team.
I threw out the pitch on opening day.
You should have.
Turned into
you should have, if not Bob Lazar. Do you keep in touch with Bob Lazar to this day still?
Absolutely.
How's he doing?
He's doing really well. He keeps a low profile. He doesn't really seek a lot of attention. I mean, he moved to New Mexico and then to Michigan, and in both of those places he had federal raids on his property as if they're looking for something that they didn't find. We'll talk about that at some point.
Yeah, and in fact, we're going to have another segment coming up. We're going to have more because you did 2 segments that night, again in 2019. We're going to air segment number 2 that ran in the 11 o'clock news that night when we return with Mystery Hour with George Knapp. Oh, we are warning you, everybody. MysteryWire.com is now, with George Knapp, is now a TV show. So we have a lot to cover. Never is there enough time, but you've got more shows that we're going to have that you'll be able to check out on a regular basis. So let people know about it, what's going on. We talked a little bit about Bob Lazar last segment, so I want to jump right into, George, and get your thoughts on this. This was, again, part 2 of this series that you did on Bob Lazar. The dates, to let you know, is 1989 when you first did the interview with him, but this is the 30-year anniversary in 2019 on Bob Lazar and the effect and everything that has grown out of that first initial interview 35 years ago. Here we go.
It's totally impossible. The propulsion system is a gravity propulsion system. The power source is an antimatter reactor. This technology does not exist at all.
The claim sounded like Hollywood sci-fi. Months later, when his identity was revealed, Bob Lazar said he worked at a secret facility near Groom Lake, where alien technology was being reverse engineered, that is, taken apart to figure out how it worked and whether the Pentagon could duplicate it. This is the simple drawing he made at the time.
Now, I had access and was permitted to view and look at the operation of this main level with the gravity amplifiers, and the level below.
The premise seems less preposterous now. In a new documentary about Lazar, he describes in detail the spacecraft he worked on 30 years ago.
The craft that I worked on, that when it's going to travel a long distance, that is how it operates. It flies along and it puts its belly to the target and then brings all the amplifiers to power, and it shoots off in that direction. It doesn't fly as it would in a science fiction movies. It flies with the belly, the bottom forward.
If the description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, take a look at the so-called gimbal UFO, a video released by the Pentagon in 2017. Naval pilots encountered a fleet of these unknown craft off the coast of Florida in 2015 and have since had dozens of similar encounters. The spike in UFO incidents prompted a recent policy change by the Navy, which announced it wants to encourage its pilots to report future incidents. Pentagon officials reluctantly admitted to the New York Times 17 months ago that the military has secretly studied UFO incidents, in part so it might figure out the technology.
In the gimbal video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration. So we have a craft without rotors, without heat signatures, without plumes, without tail fins, and certainly no tail number, moving in a way that is counterintuitive to our own aeronautics. When Bob saw that, he came to the conclusion this has to be a gravity-propelled craft. That it does mimic exactly the propulsion system that Bob Lazar described.
This story is extraordinary.
Jeremy Corbell directed the Lazar documentary, but he also broke the story about another now famous UFO incident, the 2004 Tic Tac encounter. The Navy pilot who engaged the Tic Tac, Black Aces commander Dave Fravor, has said he doesn't believe the astonishing craft was made on Earth, that the propulsion might be anti-gravity. When Lazar was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the Sport model, his name for the craft stashed in the desert.
There's no question in my mind. I mean, I'm virtually certain that's the way the craft operated, and that uses close to or the exact same propulsion system.
Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, the secret Pentagon study. He told us one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. Lazar made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed. Now the Pentagon is on the same page.
Where the study of UFOs did not end in 1969 with Project Blue Book. In fact, that was a lie, and it is now an admitted lie by our own Pentagon. We are living in a world where it is understood that there are craft technologically advanced from unknown origin that are performing maneuvers that far exceed anything of human technology. This has been going on a long time, and our government has been studying it.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Okay, so a couple of questions. One, does Bob Lazar feel vindicated today? And what's going on today out at Area 51? Two big things to unpack right there.
I think Bob probably does feel vindicated with so many people in prominent positions talking about not only UFOs being real and from somewhere else, non-human technology, but also admitting that we likely have samples of those craft being dismantled, reverse engineered by various, not only overseen by agencies, but it's mostly defense contractors doing the work. I'm sure it feels good to him. I'm not sure he would actually come out and say that. As for Area 51, it's still absolutely vital to national defense. It always has been. It's where you would test cutting-edge technology. And even though there are tens of thousands of people go out there every year just to see what's in the sky, they've figured a way around it, how to avoid Russian satellites spying on them, how to avoid the looky-loos with looking glasses. We just did a story about a month ago about a crash of an unknown craft, probably a drone, an advanced drone that's out there, and how quickly the Air Force swooped in, sealed it off, scooped it up, and took away all the evidence of it. Crash retrievals are real. Our military is really good at it. if something crashed from out of the sky and we didn't know what it was, they would react very quickly and would pick it up. And we've seen it in real time now in just the last couple of weeks.
You can go back to Roswell with that sort of stuff, and more recent ones. I've seen some of your stories that you've done on recent ones that have happened here nearby the valley. Vegas seems to be a great place for this because we got a lot of desert, first of all, wide open spaces. It is fascinating to live here and see the aircraft that we know of that flies over here. When you used to see stealth bombers, stealth fighters, the new experimental aircraft you'd see occasionally fly over the valley. Always fascinating me. I love aeronautics, so it fascinated me as it did you.
I get reports of UFO sightings from Las Vegas and elsewhere in Nevada, dozens of them every week, hundreds of them from all over the world, thousands of emails almost every day. And so there's a lot of activity there that is unusual. And it was amazing that we started down this road of investigating UFOs, and Las Vegas became UFO Central. This became the beating heart of UFO investigations in the whole world, with the NIDS organization from Robert Bigelow and the OSAP program being run by the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I just happened to luck into knowing the key people involved in all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just you were here at the right place at the right time. It was that, but you fueled it as well, certainly, with your reporting and the credibility that you've had over the years to go, no, not everything out there is alien or a spacecraft, but to look at it with discretion to find out what is real and what is not.
All this stuff that flows into us, and I'm telling you, hundreds of photos, videos every month I get from all over the world, and 98% of those, I don't report on them. You know, I'm not an expert. I'm not an image analysis expert at all, but I can tell a lot of things, what it looks like, and I wouldn't report it. The stuff I try to focus on are the cases that are determined by our U.S. military through advanced sensors. Hey, these are really strange, and they're not ours. So I try to focus on those.
Well, and then you have the government trying to throw you off track with that's a whole other issue there with misinformation. To try to
still
do what
do.
they do.
That's still underway.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we come back, Skinwalker Ranch in Northeast Utah. I want to talk about that a little bit and preview some interviews we're having in subsequent shows with Dr. Jim Lukatsky. So stay tuned to Mystery Wire. Okay, glad to have you back here on Mystery Wire with George Knapp. Okay, some breaking news, certainly that you just found out this month here in December. On Joe Rogan, you've been on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's had some great celebrities on there before, but his number one all-time podcast has just been revealed this month.
Yeah, we are as of on this day that we're recording this episode, it was posted on social media, ranking all the most watched podcasts, most listened to podcasts of all time in history. Joe Rogan's number one is the Bob Lazar interview that he did a couple of years ago. It beat out Trump's interview with Rogan. It beat out Elon Musk's pot smoking episode.
They were smoking, smoking and drinking, and they were having
the biggest ever. I mean, and you know, Rogan had been a UFO advocate for a while. Then he soured on the topic. What changed his mind was the Bob Lazar film that Jeremy put together, and he's been a pro UFO guy ever since. And it's an important voice. I mean, it's a huge platform. I'll tell you, when I was on it twice, I think, and I would be walking through airports. People didn't know me from television. They knew me from Joe Rogan.
They'd seen you on the Rogans?
Yeah.
Well, and he asked, he's curious. Here's what makes Joe Rogan so good is he's curious and just wants to know. And by the way, he doesn't fire softballs. He goes after.
Right.
You know, I remember the interview you did with him that he went after you on things. Okay, I question this. I question that. Tell me why this happened. Tell me. It's not softballs.
That's his job. That's why he's so popular.
Yeah. No, and it works. Okay, Skinwalker Ranch. We're also at the 20th anniversary of the hunt for Skinwalker, and this is something that's a place that you've been to many times. It's in Northeast Utah. It's a site where a lot of paranormal things happen, and that's it's quite the understatement when I say that. But in our subsequent shows, we're going to have Dr. Jim Lukatsky, an exclusive interview that you did with him. Explain to us who he is and what brought him that you were instrumental in him working for our federal government to make this happen, to find out what's going on at Skinwalker.
20 years ago, almost to the day, Colm Kelleher and I published a book called Hunt for the Skinwalker. It was about the Bigelow investigation of strange activity there. Bigelow is a billionaire whose finance probably spent more money on UFO research than any person in the history of the world. He created an organization named NIDS, which started in January of 1996. A couple months later, Bigelow hears about UFOs in the Uinta Basin up there in northeastern Utah. He buys the ranch, he puts a team there, and then a cone of silence goes over the property. They experience incredible activity there. UFOs, cattle mutilations, poltergeist activity, Bigfoot-type beings, portals in the sky where things would fly in and out. They kept all that secret. I bugged them because I got to know them a lot, and I bugged them long enough where they let me go on the property, record a lot of the stuff, and finally we got permission in 2005 to publish this book, and it exploded. One of the people who read it was Dr. James Lakatsky, an intelligence analyst and rocket specialist at the Defense Intelligence Agency. He shared it with some colleagues. They then went to the ranch, had some experiences, went back to D.C., convinced the DIA to approve a program. Harry Reid and two of his colleagues are the ones that came up with the money, $22 million, and they thus launched the largest government-acknowledged UFO investigation in history.
And disclosures is part of that too. He is putting stuff out with his books that he's got. One of them, and more to come here. His book, New Insights, there. But that's one thing we don't see often enough from the government is disclosures. But there's reasons that they're sort of keeping some stuff quiet.
Yeah, well, one reason he's disclosing it is because of that New York Times story, which was critical in moving the UFO topic forward. It came out in late 2017, and it talked about ATIP. We just saw Lou Elizondo talking about ATIP. ATIP was a much smaller program that grew out of the bigger program by the DIA called OSAP. And I think Dr. Lakatsky might have kept this secret if not for being kind of ticked off that the $22 million was attributed to ATIP, and that all the work that he had done was being attributed to being done by a bunch of other people. So he came forward. He's got approval to release this stuff in stages. We're learning more about what the government's largest UFO program uncovered. Every time we speak to Dr. Lakatsky, we got the first interview with him this year since his new book is out, and we'll be seeing a lot more about that.
No, you've been on the tip of the spear, certainly, of this for decades, of this story that's sort of coming to you now. It's coming to you in the ways you mentioned, the New York Times and the Tic Tac videos, the unexplained, the UFOs, UAPs, whatever acronym you choose to use for an unidentified flying object or aerial phenomenon that's out there. And you've been right on the leading edge, certainly, of this. And yes, we got about a minute left. It's sort of come to you. And Mystery Wire is going to be a show and the website that you can go to now. We're going to be updating it where you can find some of the stuff that really is breaking and happening in real time.
You know, it's hard to keep up with it all. I mean, I could do a UFO story every day and not do everything that deserves to be investigated and reported. But, you know, we've started Mystery Wire several years ago because we wanted to have a place where people could find it. It is confusing, all the acronyms and all the different people who are involved, but it's all there. We're going to be putting new stuff on that site. We're going to expand what we consider to be mysteries. Ron, you've been helping compile all this stuff, organized crime, unsolved murders, things like that, along with all the new UFO content that we've been collecting. Some of it's going to be pretty surprising. People that are really going to be interested, I think, what we're about to unveil.
And you recently testified before Congress on this. Do you think you woke those guys up a little bit in D.C.?
Yeah, I think they enjoyed what I had to say to them. It was a daunting experience, and I really appreciate being invited there for sure.
No, well, thank you, George. Looking forward to these shows in the future, and thanks for watching, everybody. For George Knapp, I'm Ron Futrell. Bye for now.